Hello and welcome. As a reminder, this session is being recorded. My name is Jen Robinson, and I will be the moderator for this session titled Improving Your Networking Skills with Impromptu Speaking. Thank you for joining us today, and please welcome Dr. Wendy Conaway, Bill Davis, and Dr. Roseanne Bensley. Dr. Wendy Conaway is an associate professor and lead faculty member of the Entry Point Launch Team that is part of the Academic Engagement Center at the University of Arizona Global Campus. Her area of expertise is in adult learning, which, along with extensive prior experience in the corporate world, helps her connect with non-traditional students who are changing their stars to follow their dreams as they begin their transformational journey with the University of Arizona Global Campus. Bill Davis has extensive experience in education in all aspects of business: consultant, management, leadership, sales, marketing, strategic planning, human resources, and organizational change. He has over 3 decades of experience working in the beverage industry, specifically the Pepsi company system, a Fortune 500 company serving in front, middle, management, and executive level leadership positions. He has over 16 years of extensive academic experience and loves furthering student learning and seeing student success. Dr. Roseanne Bensley. Roseanne comes to UAGC as a CHAMPS program coordinator. CHAMPS is the mentoring program at UAGC. After 36 years in career services at New Mexico State University, Roseanne worked with students on financial literacy, academic and career advising, and mentorship. Roseanne has a PhD in educational leadership and an MBA from both New Mexico State University. She holds a Master of Science in Sports Management from Western Illinois University and a Bachelor of Science degree from DePaul University. Today, we are fortunate to learn more from these accomplished professionals about improving networking skills with impromptu speaking. Please feel free to interact in the chat. And if you do have a question, save it to the end. Use your raise hand icon. However, feel free to type it in the chat so you do not lose it along the way. Welcome to our speakers.
Thank you, Jen, for the wonderful introduction. As we begin our program today, I just want to let everyone know that each of us here on this panel are all continuing learners in the arena of impromptu speaking. We felt the need for our own personal growth to learn it. We are still learning it. And with the information we have acquired, we would like to pass on some of our recommendations to help everyone else be better at it, impromptu speaking. And we'll move into our next slide. Very good. So in the introduction, Jen mentioned that I had worked for many years in career services at a different institution. During that time, I worked with thousands of employers, thousands of students, and the one common thread that the employers always requested, as well as the data here according to Forbes, is that we need to be empathetic listeners, we need to be flexible, adaptable, high-end communication, be able to network with others, and of course, public speaking. The biggest trend here is we as human beings like to communicate, and verbal communication is such an important aspect of that communication, where we increase our authenticity, our reputation, our ability to allow others to have a little glimpse into our lives and ourselves. It could be a positive, it could be a negative. A lot of it just depends on how well we're able to adapt to circumstances that may not always be structured, organized, and in print. So let's see what else we have to offer. Oh, now, if you think back to, we'll look at the audience here. If you remember the Brady Bunch many, many years ago, there was a scene where one of the children had to make a presentation, and she was told to just ignore the audience and visualize them in a manner that made her feel more comfortable. The concept here is that we all, at some point in time, have a little bit of angst when it comes to public speaking. And when you throw in the concept of impromptu public speaking, I think the sweat level, the fear level, and the stress just elevates in that circumstance. So as you can see, employers at whatever stage in the game always respect good listening skills and good public speaking skills. And we have a statistic here at the bottom of the slide that says 77% of the population have some fear of public speaking. Are you part of those 77%? Ask yourself that. How do you feel about it? Also think about the fear of public speaking, if that has affected your wages, your promotions, maybe in interviewing, your selection for a position, your promotions. Think about those situations and say, if only I could do this a little bit better, a little bit differently, maybe I could change the impact of how my career trajectory might occur.
There is no question that there's a benefit to having some time to prepare about your topic, to think about your topic, to write a speech, and then to deliver it in a very practiced way. Delivering a prepared speech is an art, and it takes confidence, it takes competence, and it takes skill. But the ability to deliver impromptu or off-the-cuff speeches, off-the-cuff responses, opinions, thoughts effectively is an art as well. And doing so has many benefits, including and probably most importantly, being perceived as an articulate, knowledgeable, and courageous individual. So think about this. How many times have you seen somebody stand up, answer a question, obviously with no preparation, and thought, gosh, that person is really good. That person's articulate. That person's knowledgeable. That person is courageous. How many times did that brief situation where you observed that person providing an impromptu response influence your perception of that person? Think about that. In today's world, mastering impromptu speaking is a skill that will set you apart and move you forward very quickly and very confidently. We need to make sure that we not only prepare our students, prepare our employees for those speeches that we know that we're going to be giving and helping them over that little anxiety or the angst, as Roseanne had mentioned, but also being able to deliver impromptu speeches. It makes a good impression on others, and it can be a very valuable competitive skill. Bill?
Sure. Thank you, Roseanne. You know, it's an absolute pleasure to be here and to work with two exceptional educators and professionals that are know higher ed and know about all skills in communication and as an art. It's a human form. And just a couple things that I just wanted to say, you know, some of the things that I've been able to do, and I know I only have 5 minutes here, but I just wanted to say that have come from me in my professional sales and marketing career, having to just think on the spot, you know, handle objections, to maybe solve a customer problem. Sometimes there were high stakes involved. So something would come at me and I had to quickly adapt and respond. And I got good at that, but I honed my skills through Toastmasters, through Dale Carnegie, through on the job, through the job experience. So what happens when you're working with people is one of the things I always taught my teams, my sales professionals was that, and Wendy just said this too about articulate, were the 5 C's. And I used to say, people are going to make a impression of you in the first 60 seconds. They're going to see your confidence level, how you smile, how you look, for example, in virtual here in the camera. They're going to see your credibility, how you dress. If I came here, had a dirty shirt or whatever, you might subconsciously or consciously make an impression. You're going to listen to how I communicate, how I articulate, and use my words, my acumen. And then the last 2 in our particular field was, your attitudes on customer service and care and so forth. But just focusing on those 3 C's. I can't say enough about how much Toastmasters has in myself, being a seasoned professional and being around for a long, long time. I view Toastmasters kind of as my practice field, to come in and keep my skills oiled up, because Wendy and Roseanne have put me in situations that I'm talking about stuff that I haven't thought about in 40 years. What was your best 4th of July, or what do you remember from it? And you talk for 4 or 5 minutes. Now, that may seem a little awkward sometimes, but the more you are open to experience, the more you as Roseanne said, don't have any angst or fear. When you look at that as eustress versus distress, it becomes very, very growth oriented, and you just continue to grow. And it's fun because you're in a safe community, as Michael Robinson was talking about in the classroom. So I love Toastmasters for that reason. Now, my part is just on networking. And there's an article here that if someone wants to copy that and put that in the chat, it's a short article that I wrote on networking, and there's a couple good tools in there, and I'll head for the finish line for my part here. But just remember, build your networks, right? I built a successful network with Wendy and Roseanne, and that's led to Jen, and it's led to this, and I practice relationship marketing. And relationship marketing is simply when you have that trust in those relationships, it's easy to get things done. Things get done quickly. It's a quick phone call, or it's just because people know you. Build those networks, cultivate, trust, and depend on each other more and more and more. And that's from some research here that I took. I want to just give you the tips real quick for successful networking, and it's in the article. And this comes from The Fine Art of Small Talk, some research I did. I found this article. I loved it. Prepare in advance, anticipate what's coming. Think about how you're going to gain favorable attention. For example, compliment, bridge off that, or startling statement. I love Toastmasters. Or question bearing on a need. If I could improve your human skill for speaking, would you like to hear about it? They're listening, right? And you bridge, but you prepare those in advance, but understand the networking situation. What's the context? Why are you there? Be friendly, use a welcoming tone. Hopefully you see my chest voice here. It's coming at you. You can see my melody. I raise it, I take it down. You want to practice that. And again, this is not a commercial for Toastmasters, but I'm just referring to Toastmasters as an arena where I practice. So if I want to come in and get excited and say, I have to tell you something that really motivates me, I can do that in Toastmasters, and I can bridge off that, and I get feedback. That's what I love about Toastmasters. But when you're networking, again, know the situation, the context, be friendly, use a welcoming tone. Remember, there's 3 parts to any message: a content part, a tone, and then which is the feeling part and a relational part. Then also introduce yourself first. Be an extrovert. My name is Bill Davis. I'm with the University of Arizona Global Campus. Pleasure to meet you. See, introduce yourself. Don't stand around. Be assertive, not aggressive. Know your proximity, but just be confident, self-efficacy. You belong there. Ask open-ended questions to get things going. Could be simple as, what are we going to cover tonight and how well will I like it? Could be humorous. Could be, I'm looking for an interesting topic tonight. What do we have? Or what can I do for you to make you better? You see, you want to communicate that, but ask open-ended questions. Now, here is the one big takeaway that I think you'll love. If you're lost for some conversation, think about this acronym, FORM, F-O-R-M. F represents family and friends. O represents occupation. R represents your recreation and your hobbies, right? M represents the miscellaneous items that come up. It's a great acronym. It will serve you well. Put it in your brain, reflect on it, practice it, practice it, practice it. You'll never have a problem. Be sincere and genuine every time you're using it. You know, this isn't about manipulating or anything like that. But if you want to be a good conversationalist, you have to practice. And what is more near and dear to people's hearts than their family, their friends, their grandkids, their pets? Or what? You heard Wendy ask me how our 2 puppies are doing. Okay, that was subconscious. That was just a reaction because I know Wendy, and Wendy said, "Bill, how's the pets doing?" You see, that starts dialogue that's equitable, meaningful, empathetic. Never forget that, but remember form. Be natural, pay attention, be authentic. Now, remember, there's some topics you want to avoid. You know, don't use an attention getter or bridge with gossip. You know, you don't want to go in there. You want to stay positive, right? You want to also be careful for your body language. You want to make sure that it's natural, right? I have a tendency sometimes to talk with my hands and make my point. Sometimes I'm thinking more in a live room that I want to tell the sales team, we can do this, you see? But sometimes on camera, you might want to keep your hands down. You may want to look at the camera and let them know you care. Actively listen for those cues. I gave you the 3 C's. Pay careful attention to know when to exit. You know, you're actively listening, but know when to exit. Know when your time is done. Know when to exit. And I know when to exit now, and I hope I've given you a little value in the networking arena. So I'm going to give it back to you, Roseanne. And I hope that these principles will help everyone fine tune.
Actually, Bill, you're going to be giving it back to me. All of those networking tips that you provided, Bill, are fabulous. Fabulous. And what I'd like our audience to do right now is to think about yourself being on the receiving end of all of those tips. So all of those questions, all of those randomly generated questions could very well cause people a little bit of angst, especially if they don't have that gift of gab when they're put on the spot. Now, I think Bill's got that gift of gab, and he is not afraid to be on the spot and deliver information. However, he also acknowledged the fact that practice was important. Whenever we're put on the spot, whenever we are involved in a situation that is impromptu, we feel pressure to just start talking. And sometimes when we talk without having a mental plan for the response, we can find ourselves lost in all of our words. He also mentioned listening, and I think this is so important when it comes to practicing impromptu speaking. We have to realize that our opportunities for impromptu speaking are seldom random. They typically relate to the context of the situation, and we need to make sure that we realize that every situation that we're in offers an opportunity to practice our impromptu speaking skills. Toastmasters International, which Bill absolutely supports, and we all support it because we know it's a very valuable organization that can help prepare for public speaking, also focuses on the importance of impromptu speaking. We prepare our members for that extemporaneous or off-the-cuff opportunity to answer questions or provide comments. Really step into those elevator speeches without any preparation at all by fulfilling and facilitating the table topic sessions in our meetings. Our meetings, like many situations, let's say, for example, a regular business meeting or a conference or any time that you might be in a thematic or contextual situation, requires us to listen. The first thing and the most important thing to prepared speeches, and especially for impromptu speaking, is to actively listen so that we're not caught off guard with respect to the context. We want to make sure that the questions that may be posed to us, the solicitations for our input or our opinions, are relevant to the context in the situation as a whole. And here in Toastmasters, we have a theme to every meeting, and we can expect the questions to be relevant to the theme. So what that does is it mentally primes us to be able to answer those questions, provide those insights as articulately and as knowledgeably as possible. In Toastmasters, there are 3 things that we suggest our members do to encourage their public speaking skills in terms of impromptu speaking. First, actively listen to the question. Make sure you understand that question. Second, take time to think about your answer and how you're going to communicate it to the audience. State your position, then explain why that position is a good strategy, or why or how you've come to that conclusion. If you are simply lost, you can always think about, all right, what's relevant to that can lead me into that answer. And third, speak clearly, distinctly, slowly, and confidently. Again, anxiety and nervousness often leads us to talk too fast and not enunciate clearly, because we just want to get to the end of it and we just don't know what we're saying because we just want it to be over. That doesn't help. Practicing our speaking slowly and with clarity will enhance our self-confidence in those situations and transmit that self-confidence to our audience. The perception of us and how we are reacting to on the spot is imperative, and it can make or break somebody who is actively pursuing a higher position in a company, perhaps answering an interview question. It might be the make or break for getting that job. So practicing these skills is important. In the table topics in our Toastmasters International sessions, they're only 1 to 2 minutes in length. They're not too long, and they are appropriate to give us the time to think. When you're speaking, 2 minutes can seem like an absolute eternity, but really it isn't. When you practice your table topics responses, it helps us gain a sense of how long 2 minutes really is, especially when there is nobody around to time them. So at this point, what I'd like to do is to demonstrate some table topics examples of how we run that. So here are some examples for us. And what we're going to do is we're going to exemplify what a table topic session looks like in a Toastmasters setting. So at this point, we're going to assume that Roseanne is one of our volunteers. And let me stop sharing for a second if I can. All right. So I am in a table topic session in Toastmasters. Hello, Toastmasters. We're so glad that you're here. We have, yes, and we do jazz hands in order to clap. We have our first table topics question, and I will ask for a volunteer. If you had the opportunity, oh, and also the other individual, we will have a timer for us so that we will be able to see how long 1 to 2 minutes is going to be. Here's our question. If you had the opportunity to get one meaningful message across to a large group of people, what would your message be? Roseanne?
Thank you, Toastmaster Conaway. That is a wonderful question to think about. And the one thing that comes to mind for me is that every day is an interview. Every day that you encounter somebody, you want to think of it as that interview. As we had been talking about earlier, the impression you make through the way you're dressed, your tone of voice, your mannerisms, your smile, the glimmer in your eye, all of these factors create a great first impression. But in order to create a great first impression, I believe there's some background things that one needs to take on. For example, I personally am proud to say I'm a lifelong learner. Every day I feel that I've learned something. And don't you all feel the same way? We all learn something. Maybe today our conversation is teaching us something, or all of the other ADEIL presentations are teaching us something. Every day we learn something. And with that knowledge, we hopefully can have a conversation with anyone about anything. If you're well read, if you listen to lectures, I look for things that I can put in my toolbox and be able to pull out. If I'm in a room and there's silence and nobody's talking, you try to find a commonality to get everyone moving. The other thing that I believe in terms of helping a large group of people is building connections. And Bill is like the epitome of building connections. He is excellent at that. For example, I've only been at UAGC, it's going to be a year here coming up, but a vast majority of the people that I have met was through Bill introducing me to someone else. And then that connection created a friendship, as it has now with Wendy and a few others in the room who initially were strangers if we hadn't had those connections that got built. But the one thing I always talk to students about is a belief in yourself. The word can't comes up too often. Oh, I can't reach out to my instructor. They're too busy. Oh, I can't make a new friend. What if they don't like me? Or I'm just not good enough. I think we all have that imposter syndrome inside of us, where in reality, our skill set is much greater, much broader, and much deeper. But we have that little voice inside of us that tells us no. But if you have good connections and good friends who counter that, who change that mindset, that can make a world of difference. So while I am honestly a little nervous in following through on these topics and making sure that I'm relevant, I can look up here and see my friends, Wendy and Bill, and know that they're cheering me on and doing whatever I need to do to make a good impression. So what would I have for a meaningful group of people? Believe in yourself, make friends, and I really believe in LinkedIn, super product. Connect with people from UAGC, find out what they're all about, and never stop learning. Life has so much to give that there is no end date to life until it kind of becomes one. But until then, just keep going and believe in yourself. Thank you.
That was very well done, Roseanne. Thank you so much for demonstrating what a good table topic response consists of. Everybody will notice that Bill Davis also was timing Roseanne, so she was able to keep an eye on how long she was speaking so that she could mentally plan out her response. We would also typically, if it was a prepared speech, we would give feedback to Roseanne as to if she had said many ahs or ums, which I did see. I did hear one Roseanne, just so you know. And all of the feedback that we provide for our speeches in Toastmasters is given with the idea that we are non-judgmental, but we are supporting the improvement for public speaking. And we all, as both Roseanne and Bill have indicated, are practicing. The very word practice means we're not perfect. We need to continue working on it. And that's what the opportunity that we give in Toastmasters for everybody to master. So at this time, let me go ahead and make sure I can share my screen. Okay. And Bill, you're up.
Okay, what have we learned here in terms of improving networking skills with impromptu speaking? What I want to just reinforce is practice, 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 right? Dr. Boyd Miller is in our Toastmasters Club, and that's one thing that he and I have beat the drum on. you know, the value, practice makes perfect, right? And what do major league ball players do? They go to spring training every year, right? And they're, even though they're skilled, they practice, they work on drills, they develop habits. Think of Toastmasters like that too, that you're going to be able to sharpen your saw. You know, Dr. Katie Theory has us every other week submitting just something that we're doing to sharpen our saw, keep ourselves right, and to add value to us, self-care, etc. So when you think about adding value to you, put yourself in places that are going to enhance your strengths, that are going to put you in a strength area. And don't worry if you've got a little fear or the camera scares you or whatever. You know, and you don't have to have an answer all the time. I mean, if somebody says, give me an impromptu speech on this, I don't have anything to talk about. You don't need to just give something, you know, pick the ones that are good for you. But remember, you know, in life, you know, if you don't know it, you don't know it. But when you want to take a shot at it, go do it. Have your confidence. Get out there and stretch a little bit. Expand your capacity, right? You know, for optimal performance, you need knowledge, you need experience, and you need capacity, right? You got to build that capacity. And that's what all of this practice does. That's what listening to us does. You're expanding your capacity now by gaining some knowledge, insights, our experiential learning. But think about like the environment we create, that's created at Toastmasters, is a safe zone just to practice and to expand on that capacity. And Toastmasters does allow you the tools to become effective. All right. And it will improve your speaking over time, and you'll respond with confidence to situations that you find yourself in every day. You're handed things that, hey, tell us about this, or all of a sudden they're right there. You know, what do you say? You know, and you just do it because you've built confidence, the sweet spot between arrogance and despair. And that's not something that I made up. That comes from Dr. Rosabeth Moss Kanter, who's a Harvard Business Review writer, publisher, written a lot of books on change. But think about that. Find the sweet spot and come on in and one day and just take a peek if you want. I mean, that's not the intent of all this. We're just showing you Toastmasters is a tool and it's a practice field. So I believe in it. We all believe in it. You've seen it in action here, and just continue on. So effective communicators get things done.
Wow, I have so many notes written down, and a couple of things that came to mind is every day is an interview. I love that.
Yes.
And something that Toastmasters is a communication sport. I think that's a new theme. Someone brought up the practicing of sports, and I think Toastmasters is a communication sport.
Can I speak to that very quickly?
Of course, you're the Toastmaster lead. Yes.
It is a sport. Every spring, there are competitions. Individuals can compete and advance different levels. They advance or they compete within their club, then they compete between a few clubs, and then those winners compete with other clubs, and they can go all the way up to what we call the international competition, speech competition. And Toastmasters will choose a location somewhere in the world, and the individuals who have advanced that far, they will pay for their airfare, they will pay for their hotel, and they will pay for their meals to participate in that competition. And hearing some of those individuals speak is incredible. But what this does is this puts us into opportunities where we can evaluate ourselves and compare ourselves with others. And then it's a little bit of an impetus for us to practice knowing that those competitions are coming. So when you said competitive sport, it's like, yeah, yep, we have that.
I love that. Well, everyone is thinking of a question they want to ask. I have one here to get us started. And I like this idea of thinking of every day as an impromptu speaking opportunity. And what advice would you have for people who need to speak off the cuff, say in an interview, they've practiced their questions, but have just experienced a difficult life event? For example, maybe someone was walking into a job interview and they received some really difficult news. How can a person recover then to still provide an articulate experience while trying to keep that at bay?
Mhm. You know, I don't mind just making a comment on that, and then Wendy, my colleagues, Wendy and Roseanne can jump in. Um, you know, as I live my life and I've had ups and downs or, you know, whatever challenging situations have been there, I'm very much aware of my emotions. All right. And when I say that, I'm talking about, you know, leading with EQ or self-care, whatever. You know, and I always learned early on, you know, life is how you cope, right? Cope well, you'll do okay. You cope bad, you have a little struggle. And life isn't easy, you know, brings us challenges all the time, adjustments and adaptation. But if you are aware of what you're feeling, you know, you can make that connection. And this isn't just something I made up. I teach this in leadership and motivation courses. Um, think about how that emotion, you know, whether you're sad or happy, affects your motivation. And if it's positive, you're going to do the right behaviors, right? You're going to move better with them more optimally, and then you're going to perform because you felt good, right? Now, let's just say you don't have your A game today. You got your D game because the dog ran away and you couldn't find, you know, I mean, stuff that's normal, right? That hurts. And but being aware of how you feel, being aware of self-care, being aware of, you know, I need a nap. I'm going to go take a nap. I'm going to rest a little bit. This is kind of not my best day. I'll catch you tomorrow, that kind of thing. But you got to self-manage, my opinion. And then sometimes it's just okay to say, this isn't the kind of day I really want to address this, if you don't mind. You know, I'm seeing one of my colleagues out here, Dr. Sarah Corpy, and we talk a lot. And we relate. We author articles together. But really, when we're both in the middle of a busy week, and we go to chat, she, you know, I might say, she may say, Bill, this really is not a good day for me because I just had 3 meetings and you know, and we just kind of abort that and we come back to it, right? Because we built the trust and consistency. And so that's my advice to you is, you know, sometimes you can fake it a little bit, go through, right? But some days you're just not going to be optimal. And I just think the more you're aware of your own feelings and emotions and things like that and what that drives, I think you'll be better off. So that's a long-winded answer. My apologies. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Rebecca Painter out there. Rebecca, I think I worked with you on Business 105. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's good to see you. And I don't mean to take this over, but you did a great leadership graphic for us, if I remember. So thank you. Thank you.
Very kind. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for that. I got off track there. But anyway, I hope that Roseanne and Wendy, I'm sorry if I dominated that, but you're welcome to.
Bill, you're fine. I put some answers in the chat. I think there's nothing wrong with showing vulnerability sometimes. And I believe it's another way to determine if there's a good match with that employer. If they can't accept all of life's circumstances, and if they're only interested in the bottom dollar, maybe it's a blessing in disguise that that life event allowed both you and that employer to kind of force the issue of how compassionate they might be with you as a future employee.
I want to follow up with Heather's question, because many, if we're coming from the student perspective, they're coming to Toastmasters, and the students we work with have many non-academic life events that throw them off. And so to Heather's point, what if you feel that you do not have the agency or the power to reschedule or not show up? How do you shift yourself mentally back into that place to be able to have this very articulate conversation while this other event is still percolating behind you?
I would like to address the first part first, what Bill and Roseanne said first, and I will get back to Heather's question, but I also want to emphasize the importance of knowing your audience And I think that may also address Heather's question. You need to make sure you understand who your audience is and what their expectations are. So if Heather is in a situation where her audience is rigid and her audience has clear expectations, or it could very well be that her audience is dependent on what she's bringing to the table for them to move forward, then you need to make a decision as to whether or not you are wanting to meet your needs or meet the audience's needs. So that would be my first suggestion. And I think Roseanne was about to jump in to directly address Heather's question. Were you about to do that?
No, I think you and Bill did a great job. But what also comes to mind, if you all saw Tisha, is it Robertson? She was a presenter for the Forbes School of Business and a few other UAGC presentations. She shared a story where a high-level executive within the computer industry suddenly called a meeting. They had been trying for months, maybe years, to get this meeting to happen. And they called it on the very day she was at a doctor's appointment. She wasn't dressed properly. She didn't have all her stuff. And she had to show up and get there because there was no time to change direction. And her presentation brought it clear that you don't need all your stuff sometimes when you go into a presentation. You just need that authenticity. And Bill and Wendy have alluded to that. Your true self, no matter how it appears.
That's
there's nothing wrong with just having them see all of you.
Absolutely. Be authentic and genuine. And I think in adapting, being flexible, one of the things I would do sometimes when I have to go teach a class at night after I've been in a bunch of meetings and so forth and running, and might be a little tired, I give myself a little pep talk. You know, I'm not optimal today. So I'd be headed for that classroom saying, I will, I can, I want to. This is going to be a great evening. Have a good positive attitude to help get you through that so you can kind of regroup and reset, you know, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes we just can't. We just got to kind of grin and bear it and get in there and take a shot, you know, but everything isn't always perfect. But boy, when you prepare a little bit and you practice and you do these things, you develop these habits. So even if you're half your game, you're still gonna, you know, you're still gonna get the A, right? If your performance is here and you know you've dropped, but you know you're still performing above the norm, you know, and
they so don't know it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I like those. Know your audience, know their expectations, and be authentic. Are there any other questions? We do have a couple of minutes left.
Nancy DeVore has a great background in psychology and all. Nancy, how are some of these tips, real quick? I'm just curious. You're on mute, Nancy.
I just love them because you were talking about Toastmasters. I've been in Toastmasters for a long time. I haven't been recently, but I did get as high as the level of bronze Toastmaster. And that is just such a wonderful feeling to know that you've practiced enough to advance your skills, because without Toastmasters, I wouldn't know if I'm really advancing with my communication. And that organization is just so great. It connects you also with other people, so it's just a great experience. And I loved what I heard about, I don't know who made this comment, but that Toastmasters is like Grammarly for speech. I don't know who mentioned that, but I thought that was a really great comment.
Well, I threw that in the chat because we have the Writing Center. We have all these resources to help students and others with the written communication.
Right.
But where do you practice the spoken communication? And that's where Toastmasters becomes that resource.
Yes, and we have a UAGC club, Toastmasters club. So Nancy, if you want to come back and you want to help mentor some of our individuals or members, we would love to have you, because
I'm the one that needs mentoring.
You know, practice, as Bill said, but we felt it was necessary to provide that oral communication for our students.
Yeah. And Wendy, I'd like to say, you know, it's structured, but it's not so formal and rigid that you can't have a little fun in there too. You know what I mean? We really do. We do have order, and Wendy is just the best coach that you could ever have that can break apart a meeting. And I was the Toastmaster last week, you know, and I thought, can I do this? And she said, Bill, it's pretty simple. It's 3 parts. Let me show you. And then we have an agenda. There's a website, and I just executed it. And but really, it is a good practice field and a great way to tune up.
Well, thank you so much today, Wendy, Bill, and Roseanne. This has been a wonderful reminder and a wonderful lesson that every day is an interview. Communication is a sport we need to practice, and it's always helpful to know our audience, their expectations, and to be authentic. Thank you, everyone who attended today. We really do appreciate you choosing this presentation out of all of your choices. I did put the link to the survey in the chat, so please fill that out. Keep in mind that we do have our keynote in 15 minutes, and I hope to see you all there. Have a wonderful day.